Hello, everyone. This is PamelaTopjian, and it's Halloween. So I wanted to maybe share some of my paranormal experiences just for the fun of it and see if you guys like this at all or are interested in any of this kind of talk at all here. I did do another video where I mentioned it a little bit. So thanks for being here, and let's get into it. I have seen spirits since I was a little kid, and they were in my room at night, and I didn't even really think anything of it. I wasn't scared. I didn't think that they were there to hurt me. They didn't seem scary. It was just part of everyday life, mostly every day. And I used to say that was a ghost family or a spirit family, and they didn't talk to me. They didn't really interact with me. They were just there, like made their presence, or because I could see them, I knew they were there. Maybe they were there for other people at other times and they just didn't see them. Like, I mean, in my household. So I had written in my book about that experience. And one of my friends that I knew my whole life had said to me that she remembered sleeping over at my house and she was about 7. And I told her that, there's a spirit family. They might come at night, and I don't think I said don't be scared because I didn't really think that anybody would be scared, or why would she be scared? I had told her about that, and she said she didn't sleep the rest of the night. And so she remembered that. And it's kind of funny to her memory compared to my memory. I didn't remember that she had slept over and I told her that, but that was kind of funny. And also, it helps to know that some of your childhood memories are not from a dream or something, to know that it was true, to know that it really happened. So, some of my paranormal experiences. So, I've worked in nursing homes where I've seen a lot of spirits in the nursing homes, and I worked in a hospital that was very old, very small hospital in a very tiny little town, and they were building another hospital across town to replace that one at that time. And so there was more of just like creepy feelings. I don't remember seeing anything in there. It was just the feeling. But I've worked at nursing homes actually more so than hospitals, and have seen a lot of, and I worked the night shift, so I think that makes a bit of a difference too, right? So I've seen a lot of, and it just to me looks um, like I can't always see facial features. It's usually almost like a silhouette, not necessarily like a shadow, but more of like almost like a transparent person, or like I said, like a silhouette, like an outline, like almost like an outline. So another direct experience that I can remember is I was picking up my daughter. Obviously, she was a kid, and she's an adult now. I was picking her up from some friend's house after some school function or something, and I knew the family well, and the mother had said to me, go ahead and walk in if we're not there yet. I walked in, and it was an old house in that same town where that very old hospital was. I walked in, and as soon as I opened the door, I saw somebody walk by, and it was definitely like 1800s era dress. And she just walked by down the hall from one room to the other. They weren't there yet. So there was that one. That was distinct. So another thing that my husband and we both work from home, and this was just a few years ago. So we have our separate offices, and we would have our doors closed if we are in a meeting or on a Zoom call or something. So we didn't usually have them at the same time, but not that that matters. But this time we did have them at the same time. So both of our doors were closed. I had my back to the door, and I was doing a hypnotherapy session actually through the phone, I think. I don't know if I was on Zoom or if I was just the phone. I used to do a lot more phone ones. I would give people the option to do phone or Zoom. And anyway, so as I heard him walk in, I was thinking, he knows I'm doing hypnotherapy. Why would why would he walk in? I thought it had to have been an emergency or something, but he didn't say anything. And the door closed, and I thought, what the heck? So then after my call, was done, opened my door and his door was also open. So I knew he was done with his meeting. And I said, "What did you need?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "You walked in my office, opened the door when I was on a call." And he's like, "No, I didn't." He said, "I thought you opened my door." And his back was to the door too. And he thought I had already opened the door, but his door was open. I said, "No." So something opened both of our doors and, kind of playing with us, I guess. So there was that one. And then, so one really frightening one. So this was with a previous husband. We were looking for houses to rent, and the realtor or the owner, I don't know, gave us the key or the code or whatever it was, said to go ahead and walk in on our own and go check it out, and gave us, we had the address and everything. So we went there, walked in, and as soon as we walked in, I got this overwhelming feeling of like dread and just almost panic. And I just had to talk myself out of the panic. And I kept saying, to myself, trying to say, it's okay, just look, just look. And the deeper I got into the home, I started hearing, "Get out. You have to get out of here. I have to get out of here." And it was almost like um, my inner voice saying, "I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here." It was like over and over, louder and louder. And there was also another voice like, "You get out of here." Like, get out, don't stay, or those kinds of things. And I tried to just tough it through and just walk through and look at in every room. And I was so scared. Like I thought I'm gonna see something like a murder scene or something, in one of those rooms. And I couldn't finish the tour. I couldn't finish looking through all. And I went in the garage, and it was the worst there. It was like screaming in my head. So I really kind of feel like something happened in that garage. And I wish I had that address. It was so many years ago. I wish I had that address, and I surely don't remember it. But anyway, so I got out of there. And yeah, so that was something. I usually, I mean, all of my paranormal experiences are not frightening. That's the only frightening one I've had. And it wasn't even that bad compared to what you hear other people go through. Um, so another one, I was working, and I'm a former nurse, so I was working as a nurse and in a place where the nurses had offices. There was two different offices and three different nurses, and so we kind of, we didn't have our own office. These were the nursing offices, and we would take people in just like as they came, and they didn't make appointments. It was a plasma donation center, so people would line up, and you never knew who was going to be in your line and whose office they were going to go into. So it wasn't as if anybody knew who they were going to get, which nurse they were going to get, or anything like that. So I had this man walk in, and this was probably 2 years after my father had died. And I lived in a different state from where he had passed away. I did have his ashes though. So he walked in, and he was an older man with some sort of accent. And I'm supposed to be giving him a physical and asking him a bunch of questions, health questions, and also like, where do you work and stuff like that, date of birth, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so he starts saying to me, about meditation. I'm like, "Yep, I do. I do meditate, and um, then he starts making the actions like this. And he says something about clearing the air or doing something like this. And he says, and so I knew he was talking about saging, because I would sage the apartment because we lived in an apartment. And there was a lot of, not a lot, but there was violence around there and stuff. But anyway, so I would sage the apartment and the actions he was doing. And I was trying to think in my head, did he see me? Is this somebody I've seen in the apartment complex? Um, and I couldn't place him at all. And I wouldn't do that where anybody could see me or anything. So I said, "Yeah, I'm using sage and I do that." He says, "When you let things out, do you also let things in?" And I was like, "Okay, thank you." And then he starts telling me about my father. He says he's right next to you. And my head is going like, is this a friend of my dad's? Because he was more his age. I was like, is this a friend of my dad's? no possible way he would know where I was. And I like didn't have a close relationship with my dad at all. And so I was like, this, I'm trying to make sense of it. He starts describing him and he says, he's right next to you. And then I'm like, I'm start getting a little freaky. And the funny thing is like later in life I wouldn't have been as freaked out, but this was kind of freaking me out. But it was kind of like at work and it kind of threw me off guard and he was being so specific. And then he also said, he says, you've got your father's eyes, but you're just like your mother. You've got your father's eyes, but you're just like your mother. And my dad used to always say, my mother had blue eyes and I've got the brown eyes like my dad. And my dad used to say to me when I was little, you're just like your mother. You're just like your mother. And so it was kind of weird. And I don't think the guy who was saying this knew, but it was just like this was going on in his head and he was just repeating it. And I think that was just kind of like like a validation because that's what my dad used to say to me. But this guy kept repeating it. So, I mean, this was kind of a long thing and I'm just, narrowing it down and I have it all written down somewhere. But he went into very specific things. And so that was really interesting. So he was a medium and he was an older gentleman. And there was one more person in line and I said, I need to take a break. And it was close to lunch or whatever. I said, I'm going to take my lunch after this next person. And the next person had and I don't remember exactly what it was. And like I said, I have it written down, but he like had my son's birthday and his middle name for his first name or something like that, like two things that were very close to my son. Um, so that kind of didn't freak me out, but it went along with the experience that I had just had. So then I took my break. So yeah. So another time I was dating somebody that I was getting a little leery of, and they were part of a paranormal investigation group. And so I was dating them, and I was getting a little leery from some of the actions and some of the things that he had said. And he was trying to tell me that my father, who had passed away at that point, and I don't think that the guy knew my whole history with my father, and I wasn't close with my dad, and he wasn't a part of my childhood, after 9 years old. I had my dad's ashes, by the way. So this guy I was dating was trying to tell me that my dad had came to him and approved our relationship and told him to love me good or to treat me well and stuff like that. And I kind of was like, why would my dad come to him? I didn't really believe it. And as he was telling me this, I heard in my ear, like loud and clear, and they will say that meaning people in the paranormal world, or I don't know if mediums will say this as well, but about the voices is not necessarily hearing, it's a knowing, but I definitely heard it. And it was in my father's voice. And I just heard, he's lying. And I was just like, I knew it. And it's just like loud and clear in my dad's voice, he's lying. I was like, okay, I knew it. And that was kind of it for that. And another time I had somebody close to me had passed away, and it was a very young person, and there was some question to whether it was suicide or just an accidental overdose. As I heard of his passing, I heard I didn't do it. And I wasn't sure what that was about at the time, even. And then I heard later that they were uncertain whether it was suicide or um, accidental death. Another thing, which is more of an intuition thing or maybe a kind of a psychic thing, which I certainly am not a psychic. So this is like close to 30 years ago. And I used to know when people were pregnant. Like I was studying apprenticing with midwives, and I had two very clear instances. So somebody that lived in another state, I knew they were pregnant, and it was just something I knew. I didn't think about how did I know who told me or whatever. So we talked on the phone. It was before cell phones. We talked on the phone and asked her something about the baby or about the pregnancy or if she had an ultrasound or I don't know, I was asking her something about it. And she said, how did you know? I said, what do you mean? She's like, I'm didn't tell anybody. So I was just like, I don't know. I just knew. And that was just kind of a funny thing that happened. And then another time, a neighbor woman so I watched her baby, and my daughter was just a baby at that time. And this was the incident before that one, because my daughter was older when I had the phone call with somebody that lived in another state. And then neighbor lady who I watched her baby while my daughter was a baby, they were around the same age. So she came over to pick up her baby, and I said something about the pregnancy again. Asked her, like, when are you due? Or, whatever you ask, and I knew she was pregnant. And she said, I haven't even told my husband. Like, she said his name, but she said, I didn't even tell. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I just found out. Nobody knows. How did you know? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I just know I knew. She was early on in her pregnancy, or she wasn't even showing. So I don't know if you consider that paranormal, but more so than anything, felt energies in homes. I've felt energies in places of business. And I've never had the experience of like something evil other than that house that I first described. Most of my experiences are just seeing them and acknowledging and just be like, I see you, or I'd be like, I usually talk to them. I usually am like, whether it's in my head or outright, just like if I saw a stranger, like, hi, I see you. It's okay. Like I try to reassure them that I'm not scared. You're not bothering me. I don't usually ask, like, can I help you or what can I do for you? Like some paranormal investigators will do, or people in that world will do. I kind of figure if they've got any information or anything they need to tell me, they can. Um, so I've had many, many years, like years will go by and there's nothing. And then a few things will happen. And so it's like it comes and goes in waves. And there's other experiences I can't remember right now. And if I don't think I'll think of them before I post this because I'm recording this on Halloween right before I'm going to post it. So happy Halloween. And if you see anything or if you hear anything, today, especially, or these next couple days, I think that this is the time of year that they say the veil is thinning between the alive and the dead. So try not to be fearful of it. Try not to be worried about it. Just acknowledge. Or you can even say, I don't want to see you. It's okay to say, you're frightening me, go away. Or even just don't acknowledge them if it bothers you. Or just be like, hi, yeah, I see you and you're okay. All's well. All's well. All's well, ghost. So hopefully that this was fun and enjoyable to hear about. And yeah, thanks.